Okay, so I'm going to just go ahead for the sake of time and tell you what I'm shooting at tonight. And then what we'll do is I'll ask you, where do you see it? And then I'll try to show you some of the things that I've collected anyway on this. We've done 2 introductions to Judges. We've done 2 examples of men and families who got it done, who show us preparing to do the work and getting the work done and leading and accomplishing. And Othniel is always, forever going to be my main picture of this. The Spirit of the Lord was upon him. He went out to war and his hand prevailed. That's what we want. So we saw 2 introductions. We saw 2 examples of guys getting it done and their families, not just guys, because ox is a major part of that. And now what we're going to see is we're going to see 2 examples of decline. We're not at the bottom yet, but we're going to see decline. And this is the class where you start to see this thing that I've been saying for what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. For 5 classes now, I've been talking about this subtitle, The Failure of Male Leadership and the Fall of the Family in the Book of Judges. We're going to start to see that tonight for the very first time. And the way that I think that we see it is by asking the question, and this is the title of the class on my paper anyway, where are the men in this narrative? In Judges 4, which is the story, prose story, and Judges 5, which is a poetic version of what happened, which is really neat how that works out, by the way. You have the story and then you have the poetic version of that. Where are the men, and what's happening here to Israel as you start to see this decline? And so let me just open it up before we get started. What do you see in this section, Judges 4 and Judges 5, about decline of male leadership? Or bigger points, it's wide open, I guess, at this point. You can make your comments about the big picture however you like, whatever you see in the Deborah story. Just as you're thinking, it's going to be more and more important for you to read the text ahead of time, because we're not going to be able to read the 2 full chapters in the time that we have. We'll try and get the big stuff, but we won't be able to read all of it. So hopefully you've had some time to think about that. Anything you want to point to? Yeah, Luke?
In verse 8 of chapter 4, verse 8 of chapter 4, going back to your kind of thesis there, then Bayrack said to her, "If you will go with me, then I will go. But if you will not go with me, I will not go." It's kind of like, if you hold my hand, if you go in front of me, I'll follow. But it sounds very timid.
Yeah. If who goes ahead of him? Deborah. Come on, Bayrack, get your thousands of troops and go to war. Only if you go with me. But if you don't, then I'm not going. It's kind of a far leap from Othniel, who went out to war and his hand prevailed. And Ehud, remember Ehud, this guy who had prepared, was a left-handed, made his own sword, shoved it all the way into Eglon, and now you have the commander of this northern army. Only if you go with me. It's kind of a jump here. Yeah, that's one of the biggest ones to me, Luke, that I see. Good catch. Jesse? I'm sorry, I can't hear. Hold on. Channel 3, go ahead.
It seems like Deborah's had to tell Bayrack this 2 or 3 times. In verse 6, she says, "Has not the Lord told you this?" It seems like she's had to constantly get him off his feet to go.
Yes.
On top of, "I'll go if you go with me."
Yes. That's right. That's a good catch too. Has not the Lord told you? Let's go. And I'm going to eventually get here, but listen to the song, the poetic version of all of this. Chapter 5 and verse 12. "Awake, awake, Deborah, awake, awake, break out in song. Arise, Bayrack, lead away your captives, O son of Abinoam." Wake up and let's go. What are you doing? Has not the Lord told you? Yes, that's a good one. We're going to start to see a lot of hesitation. And all of this is in comparison to Othniel. Whoever goes and conquers these giant people, I'll give my daughter for a wife. Puts his belt on. Let's go. That's me. You know, come on, Bayrack. Any others? Let's start with this one. The first one is just obvious. Let me say this. I've got it in my notes to say it at the beginning and the end of class also. I am in no way disparaging Deborah or Jael in this lesson. I'm not putting them down. I'm elevating them. The book of Judges is elevating them. Look at these women and what these women did and what these women accomplished. But in elevating and celebrating these women, we have to say, but where's the men? Like, where are they? What are they doing? It's a shameful thing. It's an embarrassing thing for the men in the story. And so we have Deborah, chapter 4, and verses 1 through 5. The people of Israel again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord after Ehud died, and the Lord sold them into the hand of Jabin, king of Canaan, who reigned in Hazor. The commander of his army was Sisera, who lived in Harosheth Hagoyim, and the people of Israel cried out to the Lord for help. Then the people of Israel cried out to the Lord for help, for he had 900 chariots of iron, and he oppressed the people of Israel cruelly for 20 years. Dave, I thought of your point today when I was reading through that. It took you 20 years to ask for help? Come on, guys. Sorry, people online. I'm sure that sounded awesome with your speakers. Now Deborah, a prophetess, the wife of Lapidoth, was judging Israel at that time. She used to sit under the palm of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim. And the people of Israel came to her for judgment. She sent and summoned Bayrack, the son of Abinoam, from Kadesh Naphtali, and said to him, "Has not the Lord, the God of Israel, commanded you? Go, gather your men at Mount Tabor, taking 10,000 from the people of Naphtali, from the people of Zebulun." Just a couple things. I want you to see this one. Sometimes we just ignore a lot of these language comments, but this is one worth making. This is an interlinear picture of chapter 4 and verse 4. And I looked through every English version of the Bible that I have, and every single one leaves this out. But the first couple of verses here are just lathering up the woman thing. And so you've got Deborah, who is referred to as a prophetess. This is prophet most of the time. This is what makes it a woman. A prophetess turns it feminine. But there is an untranslated word, and you can see with this interlinear, it's highlighted in this section here, you can see this word for woman is just, it's there. It's a part of the inspired word of God. And so I wrote it into my text because we need to see it. She is not just called a prophetess, she is called a woman prophetess. She is a woman all the way around, and we're supposed to see that. And then in, let me tell you why I've been having a lot of trouble. I make all my stuff in PowerPoint, and then we run it here on Keynote, and they don't play nicely sometimes. And so what I'll do for you with this up behind me right now is I will read what should have been in front of you right now. These words should be highlighted in this story. And all of these words are feminine. In other languages, sometimes you have feminine and masculine versions and neuter versions of a word. All of these words are feminine, so you get the sense of how much this is a part of the text. Now, Deborah, a woman, prophetess, the wife of Lapidoth, was judging, those are both feminine, the verb, was judging Israel at that time, that is feminine. She used to sit is a feminine word, under the palm of Deborah, beneath Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim. The people of Israel came to her for judgment, and she sent, that verb is feminine, and summoned, also feminine, Bayrack, the son of Abimelech from Kadesh Naphtali, and she said, that's to him. And it would be better if they actually were highlighted so you could see it, but it's just like feminine. We're starting strong with you can't miss this message about Deborah and how she's a woman. So there's that. Anything that you want to say about Deborah? How about this? Look up. Don't look at your Bible. Don't anybody cheat. Who was Deborah's husband? Lapidoth. Would you have known that if we hadn't just read it? Anybody? You get like 1,000,000 bonus points. If you would have known that who Deborah's husband was if we had not just read it. Do you see that? This woman who's judging Israel and everybody's coming to her has a husband. And we don't even know who he is. You wouldn't know his name if it weren't for having just read it. And if we had not drawn attention to him right now and made, if I had said at the beginning of this class with no preparation, was Deborah married, would anybody have known that Deborah had a husband? Where is he? I don't know anything about this guy. Maybe I'm making a bigger deal of it than I'm supposed to make of it. I don't know. It definitely doesn't fall into the normal biblical pattern of things, that's for sure. Bayrack, you're welcome to interrupt me. I'm going to roll through a lot of these examples, but if you got any comments at all, please. Yeah, Dave?
Thinking about Deborah, she's in the leadership role as a judge or as a deliverer in the sense of what we've just seen. But she is not taking it per se. She's passing it off to Bayrack. She's giving it to the person that God wants to have it happen. And she says that. She says, "Didn't God say to do this?"
Yeah.
And she's not. So to me, she's a true prophetess in the sense of she's following God's order, His authority. She's not taking it on herself to be, the person. Like, for example, like Eli, when he's failing in so many other instances, but she's handling it.
Yeah.
But she's not flaunting it.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. And again, none of what I'm saying is to disparage Deborah in any of this. I keep going to this. How many of us have grown up in homes or know of homes or are currently in homes where the woman is the spiritual leader in the house by default? It's kind of the American way a lot of times. And in those situations, we say to those women, awesome. Somebody's got to do it. And you're doing great. But the pathetic thing is she should not have to. It's the point. It's the point of this.
I was thinking, Brian, too, just so I'm clear in what I'm trying to communicate, is that, Samson kind of flaunted his God-given power, where Deborah is not in that sense. I'm trying to differentiate, not necessarily highlighting that she's a woman, but that she is a true servant of God in her position.
Yeah. We could spend a whole class talking about how great Deborah is. Truly. And we would be right to do that, I think. Okay, let's move on to Bayrack. Chapter 4 and verses 6 through 9. We already read. Has not the Lord commanded you? Gather your men. Verse 7. I will draw out Sisera, the general of Jabin's army, to meet you by the river Kishon with his chariots and troops, and I will give them into your hand. Bayrack said to her, if you will go with me, I will go, but if not, I will not go. And she says, I will surely go with you. Nevertheless, the road on which you are going will not lead to your glory, for the Lord will sell Sisera into the hand of a woman. That ought to be a huge indicator to us of what the major theme of this section is. Bayrack, the supposed leader of God's people, is not going to get it done. I would also jump on to verses 13 through 16 later on. Sisera called out all his chariots, 900 chariots of iron, and all the men who were with him from Harosheth Hagoyim to the river Kishon. And Deborah said to Bayrack, "Up! For this is the day in which the Lord has given Sisera into your hand. Does not the Lord go out before you?" There she is again. Come on, Bayrack. What are you doing? You got called and you're not going. Get up. So Bayrack went down from Tabor, took 10,000 men with him. And the Lord routed Sisera and all of his chariots and all of his army before Bayrack by the edge of the sword. And Sisera got down from his chariots and fled away on foot. Bayrack pursued the chariots and the army to Harosheth Hagoyim, and all the army of Sisera fell by the edge of the sword. Not a man was left. So that's good. It's not all bad. We're in decline. He's not a bad guy. He just doesn't do whatever he's supposed to do without being goaded by Shamgard's cowpoker. Come on, let's go. Anything you want to say now? Bayrack, Deborah, Lappy Duff? How about this one? I really like this one. This is a neat piece of the story. In verse 11, we're introduced to somebody else. Eber the Kenite had separated from the Kenites, the descendants of Hobab, the father-in-law of Moses, and had pitched his tent as far away as the oak of Zenaim, which is near Kadesh. Don't take any of this to the bank. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing any of these words correctly. Anybody know anything about Eber the Kenite and who the Kenites are and why this is an important part of the story? What do you know about the Kenites? I remember this from 7 years ago-ish. Whenever I taught this class the first time, I asked the question, who's Eber the Kenite and what's the big deal with the Kenites? And I remember Ed answered the question. And I remember because I thought at the time, I'm impressed that you know that. Do you remember? No, I mean, it's been 7 years. A man can only be expected to remember so much. But you knew 7 years ago, so you get credit for it. Let me throw it up here with him in all of this. Genesis chapter 15, the Kenites. This is important. I think this is really important to know. All of these verses are worth putting into the margin of your Bible next to this reference to the Kenites. Genesis 15. And let's start in verse 15. This is God making his promise to Abraham. As for you, you shall go to your fathers in peace. You shall be buried a good old age, and they shall come back. Abraham's descendants will come back here in the 4th generation, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. And when the sun had gone down and it was dark, behold, a smoking firepot flaming passed between the pieces. And this is what God said, to your offspring I give this land from the river of Egypt to the great river, the river Euphrates, the land of the Kenites, Kenizzites, Canaanites, Hittites, Perizzites. The Kenites were some of the original inhabitants of the land that Israel was supposed to dispossess. Remember, God said, when you go into the land, you're going to clear it out from all the inhabitants of the land. But in Numbers chapter 10, we find out why the Kenites are not ever on this list of the inhabitants of the land who were dispossessed. Numbers 10, verses 29 through 32. Moses said to Hobab, the son of Reuel the Midianite, Moses' father-in-law, we are setting out for the place which the Lord said, I will give it to you. Now listen, this is important. This is what Moses said to his father-in-law. Come with us and we will do good to you. The Lord has promised good to Israel. But he said to him, I will not go. I will depart, go to my own land, my kindred. And he said, please do not leave us, for you know where we should camp in the wilderness, and you will serve as eyes for us. And if you do go with us, this is important, whatever good the Lord will do to us, the same we will do to you. And so he agreed to go as a scout and a leader for Israel in the wilderness. And so here, these Kenites, who were the original inhabitants of the land, who were originally supposed to be destroyed, kind of got a pass. And if you will look back in Judges chapter 1 and verse 16, in this part of the story where everything is good and ideal, it says the descendants of the Kenite, Moses' father-in-law, went up with the people of Judah from the city of palms into the wilderness of Judah, which lies in the Negev. So the Kenites have, in a way, integrated with the people of God because of their past. God remembers his promises. But here's the thing about Eber in verse 11. Eber the Kenite had separated from the Kenites, the descendants of Hobab, the father-in-law of Moses, and had pitched his tent as far away as the oak in Zenaim, which is near Kadesh. And then whenever you jump down to verse 17, Sisera fled away on foot to the tent of Jael, the wife of Eber the Kenite, for there was peace between Jabin, the king of Hazor, and the house of Eber the Kenite. What do you think of Eber the Kenite? What? He's a traitor. He's a weasel. Among all of his other relatives, you know, here you get to be adopted into the family of God and be a part of this great promise. And he says, no, I don't think so. I'm going to move away. I'm going to separate from the Kenites, and I'm going to make a treaty with Jabin, the enemy of God's people. I don't know how much this matters, but the name Eber in Hebrew means ally. Is it because the Kenites were allies with God's people, or is it because he was an ally with Jabin, or both, and it emphasizes what a loser he is? Here's another man who doesn't get it done. And what makes this story even more important to us and really emphasizes the point is that the hero of the story, Jael, is his wife. He's separated from the Kenites. He's made an agreement with Jabin. And listen to the story of Jael. Verse 18, Jael came out to meet Sisera and said to him, "Turn aside, my lord. Turn aside to me. Do not be afraid." He had a peace agreement with them. He had every reason to think that she was going to help him out. So he turned aside into her tent. She covered him with a rug, and he said, "Please give me a little water to drink, for I'm thirsty." So she opened a skin of milk and gave him a drink and covered him. And he said, "Stand at the opening of the tent, and if any man comes and asks of you, 'Is anyone here?' say no." But Jael, the wife of Heber, took a tent peg and a hammer, and she softly went to him and drove the tent peg into his temple until he went down into the ground while he was lying fast asleep from weariness, so he died. So here's this sweet ally woman come into my house, and it turns out she's a vicious murderer. The woman who is the destroyer of God's enemies. In a way that's really kind of, I mean, it's gross, but it's also like, wow, she got it done. This is a woman who got it done. When her husband was a weasel. Anything on Jael or Eber? Yeah, Jonathan?
Well, I mean, she could have spared him. I mean, she could have been like Saul and spared the enemy of the Lord's people. And because, like, are you going to be in this guy's favor, this apparently somebody who's significant, because you just helped him escape from God's people? Well, she could have. She's just like, no, I'm not having that. This guy trusted me, but he's got to go.
Yeah. Yeah, so, you know, what was Jael thinking here? I don't know. I wish the text gave us some information on this. I wonder what possessed her to do this thing. I don't know what the answer to that is. But what caused her to say, my husband has said we're going to go this way, but it's not right. I'm going to go this way. I don't know, but Deborah said from the very start to Bayrack, you're going to win this war, but the glory's not yours. The glory's going to be a woman's. And I think that you see a nice dose of that. This is the end in verse 22. To me, this is the one that's, I don't know why this stands out as so pathetic to me. In verse 22, and behold, as Bayrack was pursuing Sisera, Jael went out to meet him and said to him, come and I will show you the man whom you're seeking. So he went into her tent, and there lay Sisera dead with a tent peg in his temple. So here is the commander of 10,000 troops, and he comes running up on the scene. All right, I'm ready to do. And Jael walks out of her tent, and she's like, psh, he's dead back there. You can find him. I already took care of it for you. And Bayrack is just like, no glory for Bayrack. He doesn't get anything.
Do we know, like, culturally, if the women set up tents?
I don't know.
'Cause I know, like, in Native American cultures, I think the women do that.
Yeah, if it's their job.
Women's work.
Yeah.
I think so. But I don't know if that's how it was.
I don't know the answer to that question. If you find out, let me know. Anything else about these men? What do you... Okay, we've got to... Go ahead.
It makes me wonder.
Yeah.
Jael has done.
You did what?
He wrote his.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. What do we've got enough data under our belts at this point to start to draw some conclusions. What are some words that come into your mind to describe this situation? What we've done with each of these situations, with Othniel, well, I guess we started early. We started with Judah at the very start of chapter 1, and we said cooperation, leadership, getting the job done. They did completely what God said to do. We gave words to the characteristics that we're looking for. And then with Othniel, we said cooperation with the family. Caleb and Aksa and Othniel are all working together. We saw Aksa encouraging Othniel to be his very best in the promised land. We see a guy who goes out and gets it done. We saw Ehud who has prepared himself to do the Lord's work. The sword goes all the way in. He did all of it, all out. He did what he was supposed to do. What are some of the words that you would use to describe what we know about chapter 4? What are the lessons that we're getting from this story? Yeah, Dave?
I think about this, if I was Bayrack and reflecting on my life, if I were to read this again, I'd feel embarrassed, ashamed that I'd not stepped up and done what I was called to do immediately. I mean, I know that it's good to have encouragement from other people, but I think there's a threshold of where I just need to take the yoke up and strap in and do my work.
Yeah.
It's good to have women encouraging the men, but it's not good for the men to solely rely on that encouragement to do the work.
Yeah. We're going to see more and more of that. This is only the first little drip taste of it in the book of Judges. Jay?
One of the things that I saw was, starting in verse 15, I guess the Lord routed Sisera and all his chariots. You know, you make always a reference to the chariots, and it doesn't matter, he's going to destroy them all. And all his army with the edge of the sword before Bayrack, and then his under down, that it says, and the end of 16, all of his army, not even one was left. I mean, we're talking utter destruction. Like, if the Lord wants something done, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
He wanted them destroyed. Even though his man didn't do it. It was still going to be done.
Right. Yeah.
He wanted it in ways that we were shocked and surprised by.
Yeah. So do you see why I put as the heading now, where are the men? Maybe there's a better way to say it. But this is the one that I keep coming back to. The word that I keep landing on in my head, and I get these things stuck in my head and I can't move on past it. But the word that I keep landing on in my head is apathy or indifference. Come on, guys. Morgan?
So, I'm not a man, so I can't get any application from this as a woman. Thinking in a man's shoes, so I have to think in a woman's shoes, or I don't know how to word that, but what am I supposed to take away from that? Be a Deborah, encourage the man first, prompt that good, holy, righteous behavior, and then be like Jael, and if they're not doing it, do it.
Yeah, these women are admirable. They're awesome. They do great, yes. And can't you see some common characteristics here in Aksa, who encourages her husband, and now Deborah, who's stepping up to do this, and Jael, who does it too. And remember, this story is going to mirror the Abimelech story. Does anybody remember how Abimelech dies in the end? A woman throws a rock on his head. Remember how they go together in some of these things? We'll talk more about that when we get there. So let's move into chapter 5. Listen to how the poem starts. First of all, they sang Deborah and Bayrack, the son of Abinadab, on that day. See how much Bayrack you see in this song of celebration. And listen to how it starts. That the leaders took the lead in Israel. Back in my day, we used to call that a diss. I don't know what the kids are calling it anymore. But you read that the leaders took the lead in Israel, and you go, ooh, that the people offered themselves willingly. Bless the Lord. Ooh, that's kind of a burn at the start of this song. And you go on through the song. Let's see, verse 6. In the days of Shamgar the son of Anath, in the days of Jael, the highways were abandoned, the travelers kept to the byways. The villagers ceased in Israel, and they ceased to be until I arose. I, Deborah, arose as a mother in Israel. When new gods were chosen, then war was in the gates. Was shield or spear to be seen among 40,000 or Israel? My heart goes out to the commanders of Israel who offered themselves willingly among the people. So Jael and Deborah get some pretty solid words here, and we're back to, okay, commanders, thanks for nothing. And look at what happens here in this next section. This is really important. I'm just going to go ahead and throw the whole chart up for you. Verse 12, awake, awake, Deborah, awake, awake, break out in song. Arise, Bayrack, lead away your captives, O son of Abinadab. He has to be told what to do again. Then down marched the remnant of the noble, the people of the Lord marched down from me against the mighty. Okay, first of all, Judah and Simeon are not in this list. Judah and Simeon have already been talked about in chapter 1. These guys get green in my Bible. Green is good. They did what they were supposed to do. 14. Ephraim, their root, they marched down into the valley, following you. Benjamin with your kinsmen. From Machir, marched down the commanders. Machir was Manasseh's son, and so Machir is a city in Manasseh, the tribe of Manasseh. And from Zebulun, those who bear the lieutenant's staff, the princes of Issachar, came with Deborah and Issachar, faithful to Bayrack, into the valley. They rushed at his heels. Now start to pay attention. There should be a verse break here. Now what we're going to see is 4 people who are the problem. This is the problem. This is what all of this story points to this. This is the problem right now. Among the clans of Reuben, there was great searchings of heart. Why did you sit still among the sheepfolds to hear the whistling of the flocks? Among the clans of Reuben, there was great searchings of heart. They're sitting around thinking about what they should do. Gilead is Gad. Gilead stayed beyond the Jordan. Dan, why did he stay with the ships? Asher sat still at the coast of the sea, staying by his landings. Remember how we've been emphasizing cooperation, cooperation, cooperation? We're starting to see a breakdown in this sense of apathy and indifference and people not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And then we got two heroes again. Zebulun is a people who risk their lives to death. Naphtali too, on the heights in the field. I think it's interesting that Reuben and Gad are the first two mentioned who didn't do anything. And in Numbers 32, it was Reuben and Gad who wanted to stay on the other side of the Jordan River. And Moses got mad and he said, no, we're going to go over there and fight. And they said, no, we'll go and help you. We'll go and help. And they're the first two who said, we're going to search our heart, think about what we need to do in this situation. Indifference and apathy, inaction, lack of cooperation. I don't know what all the words are. Maybe you can help me think of other words. But it's failure. It's decline. Anything you want to say about any of that? Adam?
One of the things that I thought was great, like, just because God is going to help doesn't mean it's going to be easy. And I think that there seem to be people sitting back waiting for things to just unfold perfectly and for everything to be handed to them. And really it's to the credit of the women that they become proactive and that they realize, yes, God is with us, but we're going to step up, step forward, and that's really the failure, and that goes with these 4 tribes who just sit on their hands.
Yeah. So last time in my notes, I am in no way disparaging Deborah in jail. Please don't misunderstand the point of this class. But in elevating them, do you see what we're doing with the men? What are you guys doing? So, yeah, Jonathan?
I was just on reflection of that, which you just read. So the trigger for these people should have been that there was a lack of safety and there's false gods being set up. I mean, it seems like that's they're being condemned for. It's like there's something going wrong, and you're sitting around tending to other stuff. You're not. I don't know, like, if there's an application for us.
Yeah.
Like, when do we say it's time, enough's enough, we have to take action on this?
Yeah. I think there's a message in that Joshua chapter 11 talks about Jabin and Hazor being defeated. How did they get back to this point where they had 900 chariots? They let it happen. I mean, how did you let it happen? Why didn't you do anything up to this point? It's a message of apathy and indifference. So what's our takeaway? Especially, Morgan, I'm sorry that I dropped this ball with you a lot. You say, my takeaway from a woman, what's my takeaway supposed to be from a woman's perspective? I'm sorry about that. She's not even there. There she is, but you can hear me good. I think I'm a very selfish person. I think of myself. What's my lesson as a husband and a dad and a person who is a part of this congregation? Here's a couple things for you to think of. Some of my favorite. Helen Keller's science may have found a cure for most evils, but it has found no remedy for the worst of them all, the apathy of human beings. Elie Wiesel is a Holocaust survivor. He wrote Night. The opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. The opposite of art is not ugliness, it's indifference. The opposite of faith is not heresy, it's indifference. And the opposite of life is not death, it's indifference. As a Holocaust survivor, you can see where he's coming from when he says those things. And I did this last week, and I'll do it again. Last week I read from Barack Obama in 2008. This is Barack Obama in 2009. I think it was on Father's Day. We can all agree that we've got too many mothers out there forced to do everything all by themselves. They're doing a heroic job, often under trying circumstances. They deserve a lot of credit for that. But they shouldn't have to do it alone. The work of raising our children is the most important job in the country, and it's all of our responsibilities, mothers and fathers. Now, I can't legislate fatherhood. I can't force anybody to love a child. But what we can do is send a clear message to our fathers that there is no excuse for failing to meet their obligations. He's not even talking about Christianity and raising our kids to love God. Main takeaway from this class, guys, let's get busy. That's my main takeaway. I think the bell should have rang 2 minutes ago. Ed, would you mind ringing it so that the people downstairs will know? But since the kids will take a minute to come upstairs, what's your main takeaway or last thoughts? Yeah, Ryan?
In the poem section, starting in 27, it poetically says that after he died, he bowed before her in death, and as like she kind of like straddled him. And you think about like the object of bowing is submission, and so he didn't submit to God his entire life, but in death he finally submitted, and it was to a woman who was acting in the place of God. So I think a big takeaway is that our victories, like, and for her, the victory was this man bowing in death, wasn't bowing to her, but was bowing finally in humility to God.
Yeah. Yeah. Because of a woman. Okay, for class next time, Judges 6 through 8, I think. Yeah, just do 6 through 8. 6, 7, 8. We're going to do Gideon, and the question that I'm going to ask to guide class next week is Gideon a good guy or a bad guy? Get your piece of paper out, write a line down the middle, and on the left hand say all the good stuff you can find about Gideon, and on the right hand find all the bad stuff you can find about Gideon. And let's ask if he's a good guy or a bad guy. Thanks a lot for your participation tonight.